Oh, well, goodness me. Listen to this, it's my voice again. Can you believe it? Did you ever think you would hear it again? Probably not. You were probably grateful. Too late, Buster. Welcome to the Strange and Deadly Show. And this is a podcast dedicated to the Section 3 list, a section of films related to Britain's video nasties. It was a bad time. We pair up these films based on a theme and then discuss and review them for your and hopefully our entertainment. It rarely happens. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, yes, Spotify, tell you more about that later, Stitcher, not as good as Spotify, or any other good podcatcher, and you can find more information about us and the other shows we have available, including Lost in the Omniverse, our show all about comic book movies, on our network over at strangeanddeadly.com. Now, this is the spooky Halloween show. Ooh, I'm a spooky man. Clink, clank, clink, clank. What's that sound? Could that be the sound of perhaps prison chains? Clink, clank. No, it's the chattering bones of a skeleton. Kink, clank, clink. That's him banging his bone on your head, going boom, 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 boom. Wake up, man, wake up. I'm a skeleton. It's Halloween, or it will be by the time this episode comes out. You may be listening to this in January by the time you get around to it, and none of this matters anymore. And for that, I need to say, you've ruined the vibe. You've ruined the vibe. I'm trying to set something up here. I'm trying to be cool. And you're not going with it. You're not vibing with my vibe. I don't like you anymore. I'd like you to stop listening now. I'll just wait for that to happen. He's gone. Hey, he's gone. So now it's just the rest of us enjoying a new episode of the Strange and Deadly Show. Now I know what you're thinking. We're hardly ever around anymore. Where have you been? What's been happening? Well, for me personally, there's been some good stuff and some bad stuff. And more bad stuff than there's been good stuff. But look, I'm here now. I'm ready to get scuzzy again. I'm ready to cover myself in mud and be all dirty like a big dirty boy. And I've got another dirty boy with me, the dirtiest of boys, I say, because, as you well know, he's a gentleman. But I like to think, inside that gentleman interior lies a mucky young pup. His name is Tom Elliott. There he is. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Chris. And I was vibing with you. You know, that whole skeleton thing. I was terrified. But I'm okay now. And here we are again in the Strange and Deadly cinema, that scuzzy little flea pit that we all love, with its manky seats and its sticky carpet, just the way we like it. So it's good to be back, man. How's things?
I'm fine, but I've just lifted my hand off there. What is that on my hand? Is that cum?
Probably.
Tom, I think it might be. Tom. But look, I'm just going to wipe it off there. You can probably hear me wiping it off there on my shirt. I'm going to get on with it. Okay, yes. I'm going to get on with it. I'm going to be strong. Now, Tom, we're hardly ever around at the moment, but our release schedule is still better than the Trilogy of Terror, isn't it, Tom?
True,
Mr. Gore, blimey. Even though we're hardly ever around anymore, we still find time to give our fans what they want. What's his excuse, Tom?
I don't think he has one. Has he released one this year?
Probably not, but he used to be on an annual release schedule, didn't he?
True.
He might have slowed down now. It might be too hard work for him. The boy's getting old. He's got a spicy pepper farm, Tom. He hasn't got time to do podcasting anymore. I haven't got any peppers. This is all I've got now.
We haven't been doing our horror show for a while, but have you been watching any horror?
Oh, good gracious, no. No, Tom, that would be a lie. I have been watching horror, but I'm the sort of man, I've told you this before, I think you're the same as me, I really don't keep up on modern horror that much anymore. Now and again, I'll have a little list where I'll go, or I'll put a request out on Facebook and I'll say, look, give me a little list of things that I should be checking out.
And then you ignore it.
And then I just completely ignore it, Tom, and watch Thor Ragnarok again. That's what I normally do. But yeah, no, I tend to go backwards and sort of look at older films, and I've been enjoying re-releases of a bunch of classic horror movies lately. So I just got this the other day, actually, Night of the Creeps, which is one of my favourite films, starring the great Tom Atkins, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom Atkins, Tom, wasn't said well. I don't know if you know this, Tom, but did you know that Tom Atkins was the inventor of the Atkins diet?
Really?
Yeah, no, he absolutely was. And you may have missed this because you weren't looking for it, but there's several times in several of his movies where he talks about how he doesn't like carbs.
What, like in The Fog or something? He's walking around and he's like, fucking carbs. I hate fucking carbs. Really?
Yeah, he's like,
Wow.
listen, I hate carbs, and when I'm done with defeating this evil pirate horror that exists within the fog, and I'll have a little smooch with Jamie Lee Curtis. After that, I'm going to create a system about this, about how to cut out carbs from your diet, and
Wow.
thus he created the Atkins diet.
I have been watching sort of horror. Have you ever watched American Horror Story?
I've seen bits of the first season of it, and I kind of enjoyed it, but
Yeah.
I have heard that the later seasons are not that great. But what say you?
I skipped the first season because they're all on Netflix. I skipped the first season because I sort of half watched it and forgot it. But the second season looked a bit more interesting. So I skipped straight to that. And it's pretty good. You know, it throws a lot of stuff out there. There's aliens, there's mutants, there's killer Santas, there's slashers, there's this, there's that, there's possession. You know, it's all in there. But it's a pretty entertaining bundle. So I'm looking forward to checking out the rest and seeing how it goes.
Is there a big killer monkey in it?
Probably. I'm not at the end of it. I wouldn't surprise me.
Ooh, so are you going to go through all of the seasons sort of sequentially?
I think so. I mean, it's the anthology thing, isn't it? Which is pretty cool. So at some point I'll go back to season 1. But yeah, I might do 2, then 3, and then see how it goes.
Oh, good stuff, good stuff. Well, it wasn't just Night of the Creeps that I was watching, Tom. I always enjoy watching my Shaw Brothers movies because I'm a big Kung Fu fan.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with horror whatsoever, but as you well know, that's what takes up a lot of my time. But, you know, we're still horror fanboys, Tom. We just don't keep up with the modern stuff, really. I mean, what was the last modern horror movie that you remember watching?
Whew, now that is a question. I watched The Conjuring 2.
Oh, yeah.
Now that's quite mainstream stuff, which is fine. You know, I'm not a mainstream snob but it's sort of a dramatization of the Enfield haunting, isn't it?
Yes.
The Enfield poltergeist, which I've always found quite interesting. But it's, you know, I've seen some of the stuff that it's based on. And when, you know, at one point you've got this kid sitting on the couch saying, yes, and this is happening, and this is happening, and you're hearing all noises and all kinds of stuff is going on. But when you watch the actual footage, it's just a kid sitting there going, yeah, so this happened.
Yeah, I remember that. Because I'm actually fairly local to Enfield.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't really a ghost, Tom. It was me in a wig all the time. That's what it was.
Mystery solved.
It was me. It was him who did it. Yeah, I'd heard The Conjuring 2 wasn't particularly good.
It's fine, you know what I mean? I don't think it's any better or worse than the first one. If you like that sort of slick, easy watching Hollywood horror, it's fine. And sometimes that's what I want these days, just a bit of easy escapism. And I think that's what it is. It's okay.
Well, you know me, Tom. I like it slick. I like to be able to get on in and get on out very, very quickly and leave the country as
Good.
well. I like to do all those things as often as possible. The last modern horror film I watched, Tom, it's been quite a while now since I did, but it was the It remake.
Ah, okay. How was it?
I really enjoyed it. You know, I'm sure that's sacrilege to some people. You know, and I tend to like very few remakes. But what they did with it was they kind of turned it into... It's a little bit like The Stand. It's got a bit of an 80s adventure, Goonies sort of feel to it.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's a horror movie, so it doesn't shirk its responsibility to be, you know, a little bit scary. And you've got your new Pennywise in there, who's a creepy dude. He's a creepy dude. Now, he's very different to the Pennywise that was in, you know, Tim Curry, who was in the original miniseries. It was if I remember rightly, it was a 2-part miniseries, and then stuck it together to make one film. But it's a little bit dated now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Tim Curry's quite funny in it as well, whereas this Pennywise is not funny, he's just very creepy.
Yeah.
I recommend it though. I think they did, rather than trying to do a sort of straight ahead serious take on that story, which parts of it are very serious, it feels like an 80s adventure film, and I think it's got good appeal to it, and it ends in a good place, and I think they've got good actors ready for the second part of it, because it is very much a story of two halves.
Yeah.
So I recommend. I think I told you about it a while ago. I recommend it to you. I think you would quite enjoy it.
Good. I will check it out at some point. I'm curious to see how they end the I think the child section of it. I read the book years ago, and the way they end the sort of first half, I think, if I remember rightly, is something that you could never film on screen.
Well, I know on the adult half, in the original miniseries and in the book, I believe it's just, like Pennywise just turns into a big spider, and it wasn't done particularly well in the 90s miniseries. So if they can do a better job of that here, I'm all for it. Like I say, I'm not a big fan of remakes. I still think that remakes. I don't think the world particularly needs remakes, but if we're going to get them, and it seems like we are. There's a Child's Play remake coming soon, which I saw the poster of. It annoyed everybody, that poster. It really did annoy everybody, the way that the new Chucky looks. But if you're going to do it, you've got to do it well, right?
Yeah, well, I don't care, to be honest. I'm too old I'm not that old, but I'm too old to really care about, so what? Remake everything as far as I'm concerned. There's so much entertainment out there now that if they try something and it misses... So what? I really don't care. If they try something and it hits, great, I'll watch it. You know what I mean? So I really don't care about any of that anymore, really. There's more than I can consume. I've still got 8 seasons of bloody American Horror Stories to get through. So, there's more stuff coming out than I can consume. So devotion to some original movie for the sake of it, I really don't care about that. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but you know what I mean.
Piss off, mate. I try to be nice. I try to be an understanding and appreciative man. You're not woke enough, Tom. That's the problem. You need to be more. It's 2018. You need to be more woke. Since the last time we did an episode, the internet's gotten like 150% more woke, hasn't it?
True. It is true.
We could do a whole episode about that, about how bloody woke and how everybody's just ready to be outraged by everything nowadays. That's what you're supposed to be. You're supposed to see a poster or something and be like, no, I hate it. Bloody men and women. Ooh, how dare you do that to my childhood and all that sort of stuff. You're supposed to do that, Tom.
Sorry, mate. I'll let you down.
You do. Try and be more annoying on the internet because there's not enough of them. There's not enough people out there. I need my Twitter feed to be even more awful. And it certainly is awful at the moment. Well, Tom, speaking about good movies, that's the last time we're going to speak about them because now we're going to review the 2 films that we've got here, Tom. I may only be kidding there, folks. Who knows? Oh, Tom, I meant to ask you, you were talking about getting older there. Before we review the 2 movies, how's the old works doing, the old digestive system? Is everything moving through?
Yes, nothing to report there, thank you.
Because you are hurtling towards 50. And because you are hurtling towards 50, Tom, it's important that you get the old waterworks checked. Browntown, they need to have a look through. If you're getting to that age where the doctor's going to have to put a bloody finger up your sphincter.
I'll get that looked at as soon as possible. Thank you for reminding me.
Right, well, I just want to warn you. This hasn't happened to me because I'm not old enough for it yet. But if the doctor does that and then he reaches around towards the front area, run. You must run. It's very, very important. When are you going to be 50, Tom?
Not for a while yet, thank you. But anyway.
All right, Tom. Well, that's enough about your body. I don't know why you brought it up in the first place. Okay, just chill out. I'm trying to keep it clean and Christian on this show, and you just keep mucking up the bloody works. God, so hard.
Sorry
working
about
with
that.
A man like this. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Won a bloody Ronda award and everything. Can't even understand it. Sent him a physical award.
Right, so we got to get on with this show today, or what? Jesus,
we
come on.
absolutely are. Tom, don't rush me. Do not rush me. There's a master at work here. They don't rush Sherlock, okay? Don't rush me. Tom, we have 2 films to review, as we always do. A double bill, a nice double bill, compacted neatly together. Just the 2 of them there. That's what double means. And we've got an interesting theme, haven't we, Tom? It is a theme of, I suppose, really a horror staple, certainly. A horror story staple, I would say. It's the old bloomin' witch. The old girl herself, Tom. The old witches. And we have 2 films that fit within a witchy theme, don't they?
They do. And it's funny because when we started this show 17 years ago, and I sat down and put the list together, and a lot of these movies I hadn't seen, and I just thought, well, that looks similar to that one. Maybe that would make a good double bill. And sometimes, in fact, quite often, they seem to really fit together. And I think there's really a lot of similarities between these beyond just being about witches. But yeah, a couple of witch movies. That's what we've got for Halloween. The first one is a British movie called The Terror, and the second one is an American movie called Superstition. So it's England versus America. Who's going to come out on top?
Clearly America.
Yes, definitely.
We will. No, Tom, let's not prejudge. Now, we're going to get into Terror here. This was directed by the same guy who directed that film that you loved with the two lesbians banging about an old house.
The one you didn't understand.
The one that I didn't understand and you loved, Tom. You loved. We fit our roles very nicely, I think. Tom, you were a big fan of Prey, as we well know. Did you end up buying the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray of that?
No.
Oh. That's
it did speak to me, though. It did speak to me.
That's a surprise, I thought. Well, normally, you like a film on this show. Normally, you go ahead and invest in it when you passionately defend it.
I don't think that's ever happened.
It hasn't happened yet, has it? Tom, why don't you tell us about Terror?
Okay, our first in our double bill is Terror. Released in 1978, also known as Delirium House and Killing House. Directed by Norman J. Warren and written by David... What was his name again?
Oh, Tom, it was written by David McGillivray.
Good, thanks. Okay, and it stars an all-star cast of John Nolan, Carolyn Courage, Glynis Barber, James Aubrey, and Chewbacca, among many others, and that's actually true. James and Anne Garrick are cousins living together. They invite friends over to show a movie detailing the supposed curse on the Garrick family and all of its descendants, owing to the death of a witch burned at the stake for her crimes. The witch, as shown in the opening of the movie, is captured and swears to take vengeance on the Garrick family forever. James's friend Gary shows off his parlour trick, while at the party he can apparently hypnotise people. He tries it out on the glamorous Carol, making her place her hand over an open flame with no visible pain or markings. He tries it again on Anne, though is puzzled when she seems to be truly under his influence. He reveals that he's only been joking and that Carol was in on the joke. He has no powers. However, Anne is still struck by some sort of hypnosis. She takes the Garrick family sword from above the fireplace and proceeds to attack her cousin with it, though it doesn't do much damage before being taken down. Strange events soon begin unfolding following Anne's actions. Carol is attacked outside the mansion, and though she tries to escape, she is caught by a mysterious unknown killer and is stabbed to death. Anne remains strangely aloof and troubled, and is perhaps a suspect in the events that follow. More of the girls who had attended the party at the house, all of them struggling actresses working at a local club, begin dropping dead. James's film studio friend Philip is attacked and killed as reams of film stock envelop him, the room descending into a chaos of objects being thrown of their own accord. It all culminates in a pulse-pounding conclusion back at the house. But just who is doing the killings? Is it Anne or her descendant, back to destroy the Garrick line for good?
Lights.
What a load of rubbish.
Oh, shut up. I thought it was great. Is it really true?
Yes. And it actually happened in this very house.
But at least you didn't have to spend money on the locations.
Yeah, the cheapskate. It's the only reason he made it. I mean, who's going to be interested in a film about your family?
Well, I am. Is that the sword you used in the movie?
Yes. It's the same sword that killed most of our ancestors. If the stories are true.
Oh, Gary, what's the matter with you?
It's an amazing story.
But it's just that it loses a little bit of its charm when you've seen it 15 times.
Don't you believe it?
Look, it was 300 years ago. How can anybody prove anything now? Oh, come on, you triple pad.
Okay, Chris, it's been a while, but let me ask you this. We'll get into some general thoughts for a moment, but had you seen this film before?
Never had, no. I don't think I'd seen any of Norman J. Warren's movies prior to this and Prey, which we covered on the last episode, so no, it hadn't.
So this opening scene that's set way back, which actually turns out to be a movie, did you think that this was the movie? A sort of historical witch movie, or did you know that this was just some sort of flashback or something?
No, I didn't think it was going to be set in this period of time. I had a feeling that it was just going to be a flashback, because it seems like a lot of films in this style, they always begin with a flashback, or they have a flashback somewhere down the line that explains how this all came to be. So no, I did think it would flash forward to modern time. What about you?
Well, I was quite fooled, to be honest. Because, you know, we had our Norman J. Warren episode. We had Prey, which I really liked. And then we had some alien one, which I can't even remember the name of, which was a bit shit. But
Inseminoid.
That's the one, yeah. So I thought, okay, which way is this one going to go? And I tell you what, it sort of hit the ground running, and I thought, hello, you know, we've got a woman getting her leg trapped in a bear trap, getting burnt at the stake. This is good stuff. And I kind of like these rural witchcraft movies, you know. I haven't seen enough of them, but things like Witchfinder General and all that kind of business. So I thought, great, a little low-budget British one of those. But it wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. But it's a shame, because I really liked the opening.
So you've shown your hand there, Tom. You were disappointed by the events that were to follow. Before I sort of give an initial feeling on that, I'll just do this. That's my impression of a witch.
Good.
Had to get one in because I hadn't done one yet. I did a skeleton, an old skeleton with his big old skeleton bones, but I hadn't done the witch, so I've done that now. Probably shit. In fact, cut it out, Tom, really. If you definitely don't leave it in to embarrass me, all right?
I wouldn't do that.
I'll be mad
to
at you. I'll be mad at you. Oh, you cheeky little monkey. But cheeky little liver-puddling monkey, you. All right. So, yeah, I wasn't fooled by that part of it, but then we get to the sort of modern day part, modern day for 1978 anyway, and you've got this party with James and Anne Garrick. James played by John Nolan. I don't know if you know this, Tom, but he's one of the Nolan sisters.
Oh, good, okay.
He's the one who sang "I'm in the mood for dancing, romancing." He was the one who came up with the romancing part of it. He was a romantic man. He and good. Anne Garrick, they showing the movie there. It's an interesting thing because he works for a film studio. They made a movie that they're showing at the party that shows what supposedly happened to his own family, the descendants of his own family. It's an interesting movie to make, isn't it? To sort of say, yeah, my whole family is cursed and here's a movie about it.
Well, yeah, I guess it's some sort of device, because you'd either have to do that or do some sort of flashback, you know, where you flash to present day and they're all surrounding a book and say, and that's what happened to my family many years ago. And then, okay, let's get on with the party now, because that wouldn't be a very good party, would it? But, you know, the party in itself, I think this is where the creaks start to show, because that opening scene was, you know, a lot of fun and everything. Then you have this Cockney geezer doing his trick where he's putting people under. He reminded me of you a bit, Chris. He's putting people under hypnosis. And then, is it Carol, the blonde girl?
Yes, played by Glynis Barber.
Yeah, well, she does this trick where she puts her hand like 4 foot from a flame and says, and people are amazed that her hand isn't burning. But it turns out later on that she's actually got a clump of asbestos in her hand.
Oh,
so,
dear.
You know, if she didn't get killed in the film, that's going to kill her eventually anyway.
It is. I think they were about 5 or 6 years away from finding out that asbestos was extremely dangerous. So, yeah, you know, I hope you didn't do that trick for much longer, love. No, it's, we get this sort of, we're all these posh people, all these posh British people. Like this film in general, this is, what a British film this is. I mean, this film couldn't be more British if it tried.
Yeah.
But you've always got to have the Cockney cheeky chappy there. All right, everybody, yeah, I'm gonna do my hypnosis trick, and being a bit irritating, and nobody really likes him, but he's doing that. But he happens to hypnotise, or seems to anyway, hypnotise Anne Garrick, and she turns a bit funny, doesn't she, Tom?
Yeah.
She turns a bit funny, and you're thinking, oh, has it worked? And then he reveals that actually, no, he's got no powers or anything. He doesn't know how to hypnotise anybody. It's a joke. He has this kind of thing going on with Carol there where she pretends like she's been put under, and she's, like you say, she's got that piece of asbestos there. A fine material indeed in order to play a trick on people at a party.
Well, everything was made of asbestos in those days. You know, the clothes were, the food on the, you know, the plates they had their food off. Everything was. So in those days, that would be quite normal. Obviously, all of these people died after the making of the film. But I remember, in those old Norman J. Warren films how, especially in Seminoid, he couldn't really do violence. The violence just had no impact to it. And I think when Anne is sort of possessed or whatever, and she picks up a sword and then goes for the guy, it's another example of how Norman J. Warren can't really do violence.
It is, and also the fact that John Nolan, who's a seasoned actor, we're going to tell you more about John Nolan later, but he's a seasoned actor. Because she swings the sword about and she ends up kind of clipping him with the sword, he has no reaction at all when she does that. Like, none. He is dead to the world. And this is a problem throughout the movie, really, is that Norman's not great with that. But, for all of my sort of jokes about Prey, that did have kind of an interesting concept to it, and it had some interesting themes that it explored, Whereas this it's a fairly... So look at the notes of this, Tom, and I think it's important to bring this in here now because we can kind of discuss what it means for the plot of the film going forward. Apparently, Norman J. Warren for this film was strongly influenced by Suspiria, the Dario Argento film, which came out the year before this. And I think we see kind of glimpses of that because when Carol, played by Glynis Barber, who's a very well-known actress actually in this country now, has appeared on all sorts of things, was in EastEnders, she was in Dempsey and Makepeace, I believe. I think she was either Dempsey or Makepeace, Tom, either one. She was one of them. She's running around outside, and of course, you remember she goes and hides in that little cabin there, and she comes out and she ends up being stabbed to death outside. The way that she's stabbed is quite reminiscent of the stabbings in Suspiria, but it's like
it's quite a soft stabbing though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, and also like it's the way that Argento does murders in a very classy way with these sort of great setups and everything looks great and there's a style and substance to it. This is like this was made for like a $5, so it's got that sort of that feel to it.
But the stabbing itself, it's like when you take a cake out of the oven and you're just gently prodding it with a knife just to see whether it's done or not.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it was like.
Yeah, it's almost as if the killer was checking her temperature. But yeah, so that happens. And yeah, it sort of goes on from there, really.
But just before, when the blonde lady Carol, and I apologise if we're not going to go through the film beat by beat, but the blonde lady Carol is an actor. She gets killed, and then the news report from the next morning says, Carol so-and-so, who starred in the show The Villagers, has been recast because she was killed last night. So they don't hang about. They don't hang about. If you get murdered, they're going to recast your part like quick smart.
Imagine if it was this ruthless in real life. They're just like, somebody dies and it's like, no, we've already recast you.
Yeah.
That's sad, isn't it, to think of it that way? But yeah, she's gone. They've recast her already by the next morning. They've forgotten all about it. And there's actually a trend in this movie where the people who get killed, we never see somebody discovering their body, ever.
Yeah.
We always just hear about it the next day. So we see the killing, and then the next day they're like, "Oh, by the way, what's his face died the other night? Died in a bad way." But we never find out how those people found the body or anything. It never happens, not even once in this. But we do get a look at behind the scenes, Tom, of the old 70s softcore porn, don't we? That Britain was well known for. The sort of Confessions of a Window Cleaner, that sort of thing, where old James played by John Nolan, he goes to the film studio and they're working on a porno there, and they've got a young girl there in the bath, and it's very British, isn't it, Tom? It's very British.
For our American audience, I don't know the history of the British porn scene, but I think it's only like, I don't know, a decade or so ago, maybe, that hardcore porn became... You could actually buy it in the UK in specialist shops or off the internet.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, me too. But so they used to do these sort of cheeky chappy movies, didn't they? And this one's called Bath Time for Brenda. And it's just some sort of cheeky little British dude. And, there'd be boobs and stuff like that in them, but, nothing hardcore. and a very sort of strange part of British erotic history, because it's just not erotic really. It's really quite nauseating to watch them now, but I still try my best.
Yeah, I'll still bash one out, Tom. I'm not ashamed of it. Sometimes you got to, back in the day when I was a teenager, that's all I had available. That and American softcore. My curtains still won't open. They're still stuck together, even now, and I'm not embarrassed by that. But yes, Tom, you're absolutely right. It's we had so many of these, cheeky, chappy, funny little softcore porn movies that, like you say, if you're looking at it objectively, they're not a big turn. I mean, maybe if you had nothing else, that would be it. But we get kind of behind the scenes of one of them being made.
It was either that or the Littlewoods catalogue. So we really didn't have much in England at that time.
That's right. Just move on to the lingerie section and find 6 months later that you can't open that page again. But that's all right, Tom. That's quite all right. Now, there's no need for it now. Get a Kleenex, job done. It's done quickly. I don't mess about anymore, Tom. I make sure my mess goes where it needs to go. It's
funny you mention Suspiria. I didn't really think about it, but now thinking back, of course, it is sort of like a low-rent British Suspiria. No, it doesn't hold a candle to it, but it's got this sort of element of our main character, our female character, Anne, sort of wonders whether she's unraveling and doing these things, I think. But then there's, what's the guy's name again?
James,
the sort of oh-so-British guy. He's sort of set up as we're supposed to think that it's probably him. You know what I mean? So it's trying to play with our expectations a bit. Anne thinks she might be doing it. We think James is probably doing it. I don't think it's particularly successful as selling this sort of mystery element to it. I can see what they're going for, but I don't think they quite pull it off.
Yeah, I think it's quite clumsily handled, to be honest with you. It's quite clunky in the way it's executed. I mean, to be completely honest with you, this is the first time I ever saw this movie, there was never a moment where I thought that it wasn't just the witch that had come back from the dead. I never suspected either of those two. And it's interesting because James does do something which is quite strange, and it's obviously in there just to be a red herring, which is that he's at the film studio. He's tired of this director and the two actors there who are filming this softcore porn. He doesn't want them to be there anymore. And he's standing there watching the shoot happening, and there's a light that's up above there that's obviously lighting the scene. And he's just watching it, and he knows that it's going to fall, and he's just watching it fall, and he's kind of willing it to happen almost. And it falls down on top of the director and kills him and crushes him. Yeah. And then James just sort of walks away a bit nonplussed. So I guess you're meant to infer from that actually, maybe he is the one who's doing this because he seems to have no problem with death. But they never expand on that beyond that point. It's just sort of a moment that's then gone, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. I mean, So that's our kind of central mystery, but we kind of took the piss out of the killings earlier on. But I do think there are some moments of genuine, I'm not sure the word is suspense, but a few bits that are quite striking. There's a scene in the rain where I can't remember whether it's Anne or there's another dark-haired woman, and I keep getting them mixed up because I don't think Anne is particularly great, to be honest. She's a bit blank. Yeah.
But one of them, anyway, is caught in the rain, and she goes to call a mechanic, and it's like torrential rain, and then you just see this figure walking through the rain, and it's quite impactful until you realise it's Chewbacca at the end. He's like...
I mean, it is like, so yeah, there's some, it looks like a man who's walking into the house, because she goes to this house, she's sort of trapped up there, her car's not working, and she phones up the mechanic, and it's a strange thing because the lady on the phone is being really weird.
Yeah.
She's saying, what do you want? And she says, well, can you come and pick me up and help me out? And she's like, I'll come and get you. And it's meant to be sinister. And then, of course, this guy starts walking towards the house, and he just walks in, and then she shines a torch on him. It goes up to his face, and it's only bloody Peter Mayhew who plays Chewbacca in the Star Wars movies, or did up until The Force Awakens. He retired after that. Probably one of his lesser known roles, I would say. And he just says, "Oh, you wanted a mechanic?" And it's like all of the suspense kind of drains out after that happens. It's handled in a clumsy way, but the build up to it, I think, is pretty good actually.
Definitely. So there's that, and then later on, and I suppose we are getting to near the end here, but who cares? There's a scene where
Who cares, Tom?
there's a scene where I can't remember whether it's Jane. I'm struggling to remember bits of this movie because
I think are you talking about the killing in the film studio?
Yeah, I thought that was quite impactful too because James or whoever it was, I can't remember, is in there. Philip, that's it. Man, you're better at this than me. But Philip is in the studio and things are starting to fly around, and then this big wad of film sort of starts chasing them and engulfing them. And I thought that actually really looked pretty cool. You would think for a film of this caliber, it looked like Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood, flailing around with the rubber octopus. But it was actually really well done and quite threatening the way it was all playing out.
But what I would say about that, I agree with you. That is an effective scene, an effective killing. But the whole scene and even the way he dies at the end, what does it remind you of?
I don't know.
Well, it's Suspiria. The whole thing, the coloured lights, the coloured gels that are going off, the fact that he dies under the window, which is a death that happens in Inferno, although that came later than this, but it's very Suspiria in its style. But I think it's probably the most effective scene here in that, it just kind of descends into chaos. And there are all these sort of strange noises happening. I do think it's a Suspiria rip-off, this section of it, but very well done, I think. For a film like this, which is quite clunky, that part, I think, is handled really well. But there's a lot of Argento in it. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I mean, you think about it, Suspiria came out the year before that. It was probably a revelation to these filmmakers who wanted to make horror movies. Suddenly you have something that has this atmosphere to it, and it's so suspenseful, and it has this amazing score, this amazing artistry in the way it looks and the cinematography. I don't think it's a bad thing that Norman J. Warren wanted to kind of copy that. But through it, I just don't think it's copied particularly well. We have the death of the young Cockney lady, I can't remember what her name, Viv I think her name was in the film, who gets stabbed to death on the stairs. Again, the way that the knife goes in, it's just a very Argento, you can see the hand and the knife kind of going through fresh sort of thing, But again, after she dies on the stairs, nobody ever mentions it again. Her death is never brought up. The woman who was upstairs, because at one point they see her and the dark-haired woman, not Anne, the woman you were talking about before, who meets with Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Princess Leia, I think is her name. They see red dripping down from the ceiling and they think it's blood. And this dark-haired woman goes upstairs and she sees that there's a can of paint that's fallen over and it's dripping through the floorboards. And then Viv downstairs sort of comes halfway up the stairs and gets stabbed to death. You never hear about Viv again, and the dark-haired woman never comes downstairs to discover the body. So it's almost as if her death was just paved over and that's the end of it, and then they move on towards the conclusion of the film. And the conclusion of the film, Tom, well, it's sort of what I expected, really. I mean, was it what you expected, that it was just the witch coming back to wreak vengeance on the Garrick family?
Yeah, I think what you said earlier on when you said there was never a time when you didn't think it was the witch coming back. I think that's the case as well. Although I was fooled by the film at the beginning, thinking it was the film we were going to watch, as soon as they say, well, actually, that's based on a true story, that really happened to my family, then you kind of, from that moment on, it's a witch. You definitely know that. But, to give it its due, again, this closing sequence, I think, is pretty good too. The smoke in the house, the witch coming back, the flying car, all that kind of stuff. It's really pretty good ending, I thought.
It's not bad, I mean, this is the thing about this film. Perhaps we sounded down on it through the whole thing. I don't think it's very good, but it's not terrible.
No.
It's just sort of a bit clunky and it's not quite together. And, as much as I found Prey kind of pretty boring, and especially the guy who was in Prey, the guy who's playing the alien, I found him to be really wooden. that had some interesting themes and it played with some interesting ideas. This, on the other hand, is just, it's fairly standard stuff. It's somebody copying something that's much better and doing a perfunctory, okay job at it at times. One or two, I think, pretty good tense scenes in it. But it's not terrible, is it?
I was a bit bored in the beginning. Not at the beginning, sort of in the middle section. Good opening, the sort of film within a film. Lagged quite a bit in the middle. You would be going places, you're all over the place. I think the main female lead was just pretty blank, really nothing to latch onto. Not a great actor, just quite dull. Whereas if you had, a sort of young up-and-comer like Jamie Lee Curtis in that, who really give you something to hold on to, maybe those middle scenes wouldn't have dragged so much. But she wasn't. She was just this blank throughout the whole movie, which was a shame. But yeah, just, a bit boring. But every now and again, just these little bits that really raised it. And, now you mention it, it is a knockoff. I mean, let's face it, the Italians knocked off a lot of stuff themselves. So it's...
Absolutely.
So,
Listen, they're incredibly guilty of that. The moment George Romero made Dawn of the Dead, they had a whole industry of zombie rip-offs after that. So certainly you can accuse them of that just as strongly. I think Norman J. Warren as a filmmaker, because I'm pretty sure this is the last Norman J. Warren film we're going to cover as part of this list.
Yeah.
I think he's fine. I think now and again he gets stuff right, and you think, ooh, you accomplished that really well. But I haven't seen a great film yet from him. I know you absolutely love Prey. That's a top 20 entry for you, isn't it, at this point?
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So you're a strong fan of... And what do you think of Norman J. Warren as a director now, Tom, being such a huge fan of Prey? Having, obviously I know you bought the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray and everything. You get a passionate defence of the film, and so you must simply own a copy of it.
Maybe one day I will, but...
I hope so.
I'm kind of... Yes, in Seminoid I didn't think much of. This I'm a bit on. I liked Prey, but he was this guy doing these things at a time in England when I'm sure it wasn't easy getting these things made, And I think fair play to him for trying to do it, to be making this kind of horror fare. I'm not sure whether many other people were doing it at the time. I really don't know. I'd have to look it up a bit. But the British film industry was probably in decline at that point. Probably had been for some time. But then we've got this guy trying to make these films for probably the love of it. So I'll tip my hat to him. Even though he wasn't always successful, I've got a lot of respect for the man.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think, look, he gave it a bloody good go. And I don't think the films that he's made, that I've seen anyway, are great by any means. They're all very flawed, but there are moments in there where you think, yeah, you did a pretty good job with that. And hey, that's a lot better than some directors out there, Tom. There are people like Uwe Boll who continue to make movies, or I think he might have stopped a while ago, but certainly for a long time made crappy movies, and you watched them and you thought, how is this guy still getting the money to do it? At least this guy, Norman J. Warren, was able to produce some good stuff in there. And it's individual scenes, really, more than a complete piece of work, I think. But when he gets it right, he gets it right. And this is okay. So I'll just tell you two more quick things, Tom, and then we'll move on to the second film in our double bill. The first thing is that John Nolan, what do you know him from?
I don't know. I'll probably kick myself when you tell me, but go on.
Well, he was in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises. He was a member of the Wayne Enterprises board.
Oh, is he, The Apple Has Fallen Far from the Tree, Mr. Wayne? Was it he that one?
He is. And the reason he was in them is because he is the uncle of Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan.
Wow.
Who are the directors and writer, respectively, of Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, along with that other boy whose name I can't remember right now. It wasn't just them, it was someone else as well.
David Goyer?
David Goyer, there you go. So they all wrote on that. So yeah, he's the uncle of Chris Nolan, one of my favourite directors, Tom.
Wow. I wonder what Chris Nolan thinks of this film. Well, he has to say he likes it, doesn't he? What else is he going to say? Sorry,
He's
Uncle.
it's good. It's good. It's fine. Do you reckon Christopher Nolan might do a remake of this someday?
Well, it could only get better, couldn't it? It could only get better.
But it'd be a huge, big budget remake, like filmed in IMAX. That'd be fantastic. I'd love that. So if you want to get this film, folks, Vinegar Syndrome, your favourite company, Tom, released a region-free remastered Blu-ray of Terror in April of this year, 2018. And they also released Prey in February as well. So that'd be a nice double bill for you, Tom.
Can't wait.
It is available for you. Now we move on to our second film in the double bill, and this is a film that I actually owned and have seen a couple of times. So you hadn't seen this before, Tom?
I hadn't even heard of it.
Right, well, this is Superstition. It is partly inspired by the Stevie Wonder song, Superstition. And I don't know if you're aware of this, Tom, but Stevie Wonder actually plays the killer in this. That's why the killer keeps bumping into the door frames. So I have a bit of a Halloween joke there for you. Hey, folks. This is Superstition, released in 1985, but it was shot in 1982. It sat on the shelves for a while. Also known as The Witch. It was directed by James W. Robeson, and it stars James Houghton, Albert Salmi, Lynn Carlin, Larry Pennell, and also an evil witch. I'll read you the synopsis of this. A young couple are busy necking in a car near a very old, seemingly abandoned house. I disapprove of the behaviour. The girl is worried about just how creepy the location is, but her horny boyfriend assures her everything will be fine. And suddenly, a bloodied ghoul shows itself at the window, and the couple drives away well before they can see that it's merely a prank conducted by two troublemakers using puppets. However, karma comes for them quickly, as the two fall afoul of a mysterious killer present within the old house. One of them is decapitated. Chop! His head cooking away in the microwave. That's my Halloween sound effect, Tom. Nice. Which the other finds as the door opens and explodes. Kapow! He's being chased by an unseen presence, and though he makes for the window, he gets stuck in the middle of it and is cut in half. Police Inspector Sturgis visits the freshly minted Reverend David Thompson, who has been brought in to help restore the old house the two boys died in. Sturgis tells him of the killings and also reveals that there's a bad vibe around the place and has been for many years. There's also a large body of water in the property known as the Black Pond, and with young teenagers apparently going there for skinny dipping, Sturgis is concerned about its presence. The inspector believes that the murders have been conducted by the house's caretaker, Arlen, who is mute. He sets up camp at the property in order to spy on the man, who makes off when caught. Also residing near the property is the mysterious Elvira, not that one, unfortunately, an old woman who knows more than she's letting on. A horrible accident happens to Reverend Mayer while work continues on restoring the property before a new family moves in. A saw blade comes loose and flies straight towards the Reverend, burrowing its way through his chest and out the back, killing him. Another killing happens in the basement, where an unseen killer pushes a renovator down a shaft who subsequently dies by hanging. The Leahy family eventually move in, and it's not long before things begin to go south. Sturgis's detective colleague, who was earlier pulled into the water by a ghoulish hand, turns up in the form of a severed hand attached to one of George Leahy's daughters. It's enough to scare her senseless. The more ghoulish events happen and the more people go missing, the more David Thompson is convinced that there's something far from normal happening at the house. He consults with Elvira, not that one, sadly, who tells him to seek out more information from the Malleus Maleficarum. He does so, and through a flashback we learn that a witch named Alondra was drowned in the lake, but not before declaring a curse upon all nearby. That was in the 1600s. She now continues to haunt the local grounds. Thompson had earlier retrieved a silver cross from the lake, and this cross prevented her from arriving during the day. With it lifted, she could roam around at any time, and the only chance he has is to complete the original ritual and burn the lake with the cross inside it. There's little time to act as Alondra begins her mission of vengeance against the Leahy family creeping around the house. The bodies begin to mount up as Thompson makes his way to the old house, hoping to save the family and complete the ritual to send Alondra back to hell.
Inspector, is there something we can do for you?
The house on Mill Road. The Sharrock place. County recorder listed as church property. Now, you had 120 days after the hearing to take some action. You haven't done it. Now your time is running out.
I don't know what you're talking about.
2 kids were killed out there. The medical examiner thinks it's a cult thing or something. 1 kid was gutted and slashed to death. The other microwaved.
Wait a minute, what?
The place is like a county dump. It's just full of trash. A microwave gets damaged. Somebody throws it away. Somebody picks it up. Somebody, chuckling the way you just did, decapitates a kid.
Oh, look, Inspector, please. David is new here.
That's only part of it. You also have standing water on the property. Black Pond. Kids like to skinny dip there at midnight, and sometimes they drown.
Inspector, the property is posted against trespassing.
It really doesn't matter. It's a makeout place. It always has been. I got my first... Anyway, we held your caretaker's idiot son as long as we could, and then we had to let him go.
Inspector, the man is a mute.
You say he can't talk. I say he won't.
So, watch out, witches about. That's right, there's a witch, and she's ready to party. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm coming up with taglines.
Good one. That's a good one.
This is Superstition, Tom. An 80s slasher, you might say. You hadn't seen this film before, Tom. Now, I want to start with this. The last film, Terror, had a Suspiria sort of vibe to it. One of the things that's always drawn me towards this movie since I first saw it, that I bought it when it came out on DVD in this country back in 2005, I think it was, is that I think it's got a real Italian feel to it. I think both of these movies are very influenced by Argento, and I feel like this film has a little bit of a Fulci influence in there. So, just to get your initial feelings on things, are you seeing that as well?
I think it was more apparent to me in this one because of especially one thing, the music. I thought for you know a shitty cheap 80s slasher, and I mean that in a very affectionate way.
Yeah.
I thought the music was great. Early on, there's a piece of music which sort of sounds like Halloween with a few bars took out of it. But later on, there's stuff that really sounds Suspiria-esque, you know, like a Goblin knockoff kind of thing. But it was good. It was good. So I did notice it a bit more in this one, I think.
Okay, so starting at the beginning of it, we get the old trope, Tom. The old standard horror trope, a young couple having a bit of a kiss and a cuddle in a car. If only it could happen to me, but I'm old now. Nobody gives a toss. What am I going to do?
I don't know.
Fine, you're of no help whatsoever. You're the ladies' man. You're supposed to be teaching me.
My powers only go so far, Chris.
You useless git. But it doesn't matter, Tom, because they are being pranked by these 2 boys. And one thing I've always liked about this movie is it's got a bit of an atmosphere to it, I think. And we get to see our first kind of taste of that in the house where the young couple go away, they drive away. Lucky, they manage to survive the film. They're very lucky people because, well, as we're about to get into, not many people do. But these 2 boys are kind of around this house and there's a guy in there. What I like is, right from the beginning, I think the film pretty much lets you know that there's nobody else is implicated in these murders. They've got a red herring in here, but it's fairly obvious, I think, that the witch is the one doing all of these things. And they accomplish that by they never show, throughout this movie, they never show the witch completely. They show her hand and they show shadows on the wall. And I like that about it. And we see our sort of first glimpse of that here, where she's after that boy and she throws him up into the ceiling and then she takes his head off. You don't see that. And yeah, she puts his head in the microwave, Tom.
it really does hit the ground running, I think, the movie. You know, there's that little smoochy scene in the car, and then there's just this carnage for like 5 minutes or something, head in a microwave, all kinds of stuff going on. And again, it's like the last one, Terror, where it's like the opening is like, well, okay, great, you know, I'm really up for this. So really, it made me sit up and take notice. I was like, have we got some little lost gem here, some underappreciated little slasher? And I think some people will probably think it is, whether we do or not. We'll get to that.
Okay, yeah. So we get 2 deaths here. The other boy tries to jump through a window and gets cut in half by the killer, which again I think is a bit of an Argento kind of throwback. Because by this point, of course, I think you've had Inferno out at this point, so again, you get more influence coming through. Although this film doesn't have the style of something like Suspiria, and neither of these films really have that, which is perhaps a detriment to them. But after that, we get to meet our main character here, Tom, Guy Pearce. Guy Pearce, eh? Playing the Reverend. Do you not think that Reverend looks like Guy Pearce?
I didn't, but, you know, I'll take your word for it.
Oh, Tom, he looks like Guy Pearce. I think so. Well, we meet him anyway. He's the Reverend David Thompson, played by James Houghton. And he's been brought in to this local area. They've got this old house there these 2 boys died in. And they want to restore the area. And they want a new family to move in. It's going to be Reverend George Leahy. He's going to move in with his family, and then they'll try and find later on. They'll try and find a place that's a bit closer to the church, but they need to move in there for the time being. So it sets up, I think, fairly quickly that the whole area there, that whole property in the grounds there's something very wrong there. There's a bad vibe there. People feel there's a curse there. There's a strange old woman living near the property, and of course, Inspector Sturgis is feeling that Arlen, who's a mute, who of course, unfortunately, in a lot of these sorts of films, the sort of ogreish looking dude is often the one who gets tagged with the murders, gets blamed for them when it's actually somebody else who's doing them. But it sets things up pretty quickly, I think.
A little bit of trivia for you. The inspector, Albert Salmi, is actually a Twilight Zone actor. He was in 3 episodes of The Twilight Zone. And he barely looks like he's aged a day, to be honest, since he was in the Twilight Zone. I always enjoyed him. He really always committed to his part, you know, and he'd often have some little quirk, some accent that he puts on, or something like that. He was not so much a chameleon, but he'd always have something different that he brought to each one. Bit of a sad ending, though. In 1990, he went home and he killed his wife and then committed suicide. So, you know,
goodness me,
yeah, a bit of a dark sort of ending, unfortunately. But an actor I always enjoyed, really.
Why you got to bring the vibe down?
Yeah, I'll just drop that in there for you.
Wow, okay, that makes me look at him a bit differently, I have to say. Although I suppose, you know, the art and the art and the artist. What do you separate the two?
Well,
interesting. Yeah.
The thing is, and I'm not excusing it. I have read things, and I almost interviewed his daughter, and I still might go back to that in the future. But his daughter's sort of forgiven him. I don't know the full story, but the suggestion that he did suffer a lot of kind of mental abuse in that relationship, and I think one day just snapped. But, you know, I don't know the full ins and outs of it, but that's the gist I'm getting.
Well, we ever do our true crime podcast, so maybe we'll have a look at that. But, you know, I think he's pretty decent in this role, isn't he?
Yeah. I think he's clearly the best actor in it.
I would say so, yeah. I mean, he has a certain kind of weight and gravitas to what he's saying. Yeah, I mean, he plays a bit of a sort of grumpy policeman, doesn't he, really, Tom?
I don't know. He seems like his heart's in the right place, and he's sort of on the money, isn't he? He's the one who's like, you know, really, you get out of here, you shouldn't be here. I'm not sure he picks the right guy for it, but, you know, all this stuff is going on. People are dying by circular saws in the chest, and I'll be honest with you, quite early on in these proceedings, I would be like, you know what? I might just go. I might just go and stay in that hotel down the road. This just isn't working out for me.
Nobody ever does, do they? Tom? That's the problem. There's a house that's killing people. Maybe we should demolish it and just move on. But no, they...
The thing is, though, they're not even trapped there. They could leave at any moment. And at one point, the old woman who lives like 4 foot away is like, you need to leave of your own free will. Okay, then. I think I will, and then problem solved. But no, they don't. They stay there after all these people are dying.
Yeah, and we get... The deaths come thick and fast, I think, within the first half of it, certainly. We get a couple of deaths there. But how do you feel about the way that they do this? So the camera is kind of the killer, and then we see the witch's hand with her long fingernails on the wall, the shadow of that. I think it's quite effective in the way it's done. I mean, what say you?
Yeah, it's pretty decent. And I think the deaths are pretty good as well. The circular saw one is probably a favourite, where some guy is sawing a piece of wood or something with this circular saw that comes off its bolt or whatever these things are attached to, I don't know, and then bounces over the floor and lands in the chest of a priest who's sitting there, and it just continues to spin and just goes right the way through his body. So I think, we've been out the horror game for a little bit. We do other things, our superhero show, I've got the Twilight Zone, and I kind of came back to it and thought, you know what, I miss a bit of splatter. So I was quite enjoying that.
I agree with that. I mean, I don't know if we give the impression that we don't watch horror anymore because we don't do this show very much, because we're kind of, we're spending so much time doing the superhero stuff, but it's not the case. I still love all the horror movies I ever loved. And I still love a good gory movie. And this isn't super gory, but the deaths that are here, the kills that are done, I think are done pretty well. Now, even at this point, as we're sort of building up to the family moving in, they come in. The witch is kind of creeping around the house, and like I say, you never really see it. Are you getting the Italian vibe there?
I'm guessing maybe not quite as much as you. It still screams America to me. It's an American sort of 80s movie through and through, but to a degree I think maybe you're seeing it a bit more.
Well, I think sort of the kid going down into the basement, wandering around, the strange sounds, I feel like there's a bit of Fulci in that, but look, maybe it's just me, I don't know. Certainly I think the music, because the music throughout this, there's maybe I'll leave that until we get right to the end of it, because that's when that sort of tense music really kicks in. But certainly I feel a bit of that coming through. The family move in. One of my problems with this movie is that the family are completely unmemorable.
Yeah.
There's nothing about this family that's special at all. You have the father, Reverend George Leahy, a sad sack of a man, doesn't do anything, doesn't act to help anybody. They're very bland. There's no characters in that. Whatever you want to say about some of the Friday the 13th movies, and some of them are, cheap, quote unquote, crappy slasher movies to people who are being, people who love art house movies. They would look at them and think, well, that's the worst of the worst. That's up to them. I choose not to go down that path. But there are memorable characters within those movies, within some of them. This family have never done it for me, to be honest with you. The people who are kind of carrying it really are Albert Salmi and James Houghton, although I gather from what you're saying that you weren't super impressed with him.
The way you kind of sum that up, you kind of took the words out of my mouth, because I sat and watched it and I thought, you know what, in a lot of ways this is no better or worse than your average Friday the 13th in the deaths are good, there's some good effects in it, bit of pacing issues. Again, I was starting to get a bit bored in the middle, so it has that in the negative column. But you're absolutely right, because when you think, so why is this film not more well known? Well, yes, it matches them in terms of quality of effects and all that business, and it is quite a fun movie, but I just found there's nothing really to hold on to. Friday the 13th, even in the worst ones, had Jason, and in a lot of them there was at least one or two of the kids who stood out. Sometimes more, sometimes it had a really decent cast, and they're not great actors, but they just had something. And this, unfortunately, apart from old Albert Salmi, there's nothing nothing that pulls it through the ages, nothing that really keeps it alive. So when you ask yourself, why is this not stuck around in the consciousness more? I think that's what it is. There's nothing really that makes it stand out.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against that. You know, I will, when we get to the summary of it, I'll explain why I like this movie, and I do like it. You know, I like it enough to have seen it several times, but you know, it's a second, maybe even third tier slasher, without a doubt. You know, this is the kind of film that was shot in 1982. This is the sort of film that was made at a time when they were making hundreds and hundreds of these things. And I think that what helps it is, to me, that it feels like it's got a bit of the Italian influence in there. I feel like it's got a bit of a Fulci House by the Cemetery sort of feel to it at times. Mm-hmm. And as we're moving towards the end and, you know, people are dying left, right and centre, we get a pretty decent little soundtrack on this. And that piece of tense music with the piano that's very Goblin. And I do think it elevates some of those scenes a little bit more to see, because, you know, the young boy who's part of the Leahy family goes missing. He's been killed by the witch. Poor Albert Salmi, well, his character anyway, gets taken by the witch. And the witch is very good at just grabbing people by the face, isn't she?
Yeah.
Just grabbing people by the face and just pulling them away. And like I said, I do like the fact that they never completely show the witch. They always show the hand, or they show part of the body, or they show her sort of shrouded in shadows, or her fingers in shadow on the wall. I do like that aspect of it. I think if you just seen a woman with sort like the witch that we saw at the end of Terror, you see her completely, and the makeup's not great, and for me that lets it down a little bit. Whereas in this, because you never see her completely, I feel like that's more effective. But it all builds up to this finale where the family, they're not the smartest people in the world, are they, Tom? It has to be said.
No, definitely
not the smartest people. It's all building up to a thing there, but we did get a flashback scene, didn't we, where Reverend Thompson is looking into the past and to figure out how this happened and what's going on with the witch. And so we see a flashback of the witch being... your minister there, your Christian minister, says, well, look, I'm not going to burn you, because I can't do that to somebody even as evil as you, so I'm going to drown you in the lake. And she's, you know, got the horrible devilish voice and saying, you'll all burn for this, you know, that sort of thing. Well, how do you feel about that flashback scene? I thought it conveyed the motivation of the witch pretty well, I think.
Yeah, it was good. And I guess this is what links it to the Terror as well, or Terror. Both films are about a witch from the past who was killed, burned or whatever, coming back to exact revenge later on. So interesting kind of parallels between the two completely. Maybe it is a bit of a trope of witchy movies. I really don't know. But yeah, good scenes.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think this scene would have been better placed at the beginning of the movie rather than 3/4 of the way through?
I can see why they didn't. Again, if they're trying to play with this, is it actually that big dude who they keep saying is the killer? They're trying to play with that. If they'd had this at the beginning, then it would have been like Terror, wouldn't it? Where you're like, yep, definitely a witch.
And did you feel that way? Did you think, yes, this is definitely the witch throughout the whole thing?
Yeah, probably. You know, they did try and throw in the red herring of the big lug of a son of the other woman. I thought, you know, maybe that woman will turn out to be the witch in some way, although that wouldn't always work, or something like that. The old woman who lives, you know, a little away. But yeah, I was pretty sure it was the witch.
Yeah, me too. You know, remembering from the first time I saw this, you know, I mean, for starters, that guy, what was his name, Arlen the Mute, who they blame for everything, he didn't have a big witchy hand, Tom. So how could he have done his shadow work without doing that? But it all builds up to a finale, doesn't it? Basically, in this old house where the Leahy family unfortunately meet their end. Old Reverend Thompson, all he can do is wave that cross around and not really be able to actually help anybody. There is a pretty decent kill in this, which is one of the young daughters gets a peg hammered into her head. That's pretty decent. But this is one of those movies where you start to realise that if anybody makes it out of this, it's probably only going to be the Reverend, because almost everybody else who's involved with this perishes. The whole Leahy family get killed by the witch. We see her come down the stairs at one point, and she's kind of, again, shrouded in darkness. She's got a hood around her. You never see her face. That's the only thing. And he does this ritual where he... the ritual of sorts, I suppose. He takes gasoline to the lake, and then he ends up setting the whole lake on fire, and he throws the cross in. And, well, surely, Tom, that must be the end of the story. He's sitting there on the lakeside thinking, thank goodness this is over. Nothing will ever go wrong in life again. I'm going to leave now, and I'll live happily ever after. And then it's the end credits, right, Tom?
Yeah. Well, no.
Because this film does something that I really don't like, to be honest with you, Tom.
Go on.
Which is that... So he's throwing the cross in. We think the witch is gone forever. And then all of a sudden her hand comes up out of the lake and grabs his leg and pulls the Reverend into the water. And so he is dead and gone, and nobody survived this movie. And the reason I don't like that, and I'm interested to get your take on it, is because it sort of negates everything we've just seen.
Right.
It's basically, this is how you defeat this thing. Oh, you've defeated it. No, actually you haven't. Goodbye. I've never been a big fan of that sort of thing. I don't mind it in like a Tales from the Crypt sort of way, where that was very much a part of those stories, where there was going to be a big twist at the end of it. With this, you might as well just have killed him at the beginning of the movie then, because if he was always going to die, and if all these people were going to die, and the witch wasn't going to meet her end in some way, what was the ultimate point of it? It does make what came before it feel a little bit pointless to me.
Would you say that about every Nightmare on Elm Street film? Because they all seem to do that as well, don't they? Well, we've got this way of killing Freddy. Let's do it. Okay, we've done it. Oh, he's come back.
Yeah.
Is it okay in those, but not in this, or is it just something you don't like ever, really?
Well, I'll say it in this way. At the end of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, he doesn't come back at the end of it. He comes back in the next one. So it doesn't negate what I just saw for 90 minutes. There's a feeling in that. So when you watch Nightmare on Elm Street, for example, certainly if you have knowledge of the franchise, you're aware of the fact that this is a big franchise, and there's always going to be a way for them to bring Freddy back, because it would make a lot of money. This is, we've just seen 90 minutes of this stuff happening. We think the witch is gone, but the witch isn't gone. He's pulled the last surviving person rather, into the water, and so the witch actually isn't dead, and so why does any of it matter at all? Whereas if a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, or even a Halloween movie, at the end of a Halloween movie, Michael Myers, for all intents and purposes, is dead until the next one comes along, and then they show how he managed to get out of it.
Yeah, and someone usually survives as well.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat different, but I think it's a good point that you've made at the same time. Why do I have a problem with it here? Why don't you summarise then, Tom, your feeling on the film as a whole? It's
funny, you know the ending there where he dies and then the credits roll. It is kind of reminiscent of the way they used to make films, where it's like, even if it was an ending where they killed Dracula at the end or something, we've killed Dracula, dun, 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 and then the credits just roll and there's no sort of debrief afterwards or anything like that. But I think maybe I played my hand a bit early before, and I did kind of sum up my feelings on it. I generally enjoyed it, I generally did. I did find myself getting a bit bored in the middle. Again, not much to latch on to in terms of, I didn't care whether any of that family died, and fair play to them. Yeah. They killed the kid and everything. They didn't care who they killed in this movie. Priests, kids, no one's safe. So full marks for that. But yeah, I think it was generally enjoyable. I might even watch it again. I'm not going to buy it, so I probably never will watch it again. But I thought it was okay. But I can also see why it's not really one that stayed in the consciousness as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment of it, Tom. I quite like the movie. I've seen it a few times now. You were asking me actually the other day. You were saying you were quite surprised that this was in my collection.
Yeah, definitely.
Why is that?
Our tastes cross over a lot, and they do have their different avenues occasionally, but some of the sort of core stuff that we both like is the core stuff that we both like. Fulci, Argento, Friday the 13th. Etc., etc. So I would say, apart from your martial arts movies, probably a lot of the time, if you held up a movie to me and said, what about this? if it's not one that I like or own, I will usually at least know of it. And this one was just so completely, I've never heard of this movie before in my life. So the fact that you kind of actually owned it was just a bit of a surprise to me. So I'm curious as to how it actually came to be on your shelf.
Well, many, many years ago, probably when I was in my mid to late teens, I would say, I was an avid eBay watcher. And I would go on there and look at different deals and things like that. I would read websites like Hysteria Lives, which I think may have been what pointed me towards this movie. I think I read a review many years ago of Superstition on Hysteria Lives, and I liked the sound of it. I think so. I can't be sure of that because it was a very long time ago and a lot has happened since then. 35 now, getting old, almost as old as you, Tom. But it is not quite, obviously. I've still got I've got a nice gap. I've got a buffer there, which is good. But somehow it did, and I was an avid fan of slasher movies, and there was a point where I would try and get as many as I could, and try to get through as many as I could, and you know, obviously the burnout hit me at some point because it just does. But at one point, slashers were kind of my thing, and this was one of them, and it stuck with me. I think because I see some vibes in there that I like that remind me of films that are better. Definitely, you know, there's nothing in here that rivals Argento at his best or Fulci at his best. You know, we when we talk about atmosphere, I think there's some atmosphere to this, but it ain't the Beyond. You know, that. You know, it's not even fit to lick its boots, you know. But I do think there's some good stuff in here, and I think they do some good stuff with the killer, and I think it's got a good soundtrack to it. It's a Goblin rip-off sort of soundtrack, but I think what they did with it was pretty impressive. It's I said second or third tier. It's probably a third tier slasher, really. It would sit alongside, you know, stuff like Intruder, you know, films like that. Really old 80s slasher movies that aren't ever going to be within the top bracket of the ones that you remember the most. But I think it's still pretty good. You know, it's a bit slow in parts, and that's to its detriment, I think. I think if they tighten this up a bit and kept the pace that they had at the beginning of it, I'd like that more. And I'm not a huge fan of the shock ending. You know, there was a trend in the 90s, especially with films like I Know What You Did Last Summer, where the main character at the end, the killer would come back at the very end and pull, you know, the main character through a window or something at the end. And it's funny because now that I think about it, you know, there's a shock ending at the end of the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie where Nancy's mother gets pulled through the door by Freddy. So it's, you know, that stuff has always been there. Why am I moaning about this one? I don't know. I just like to moan. It's Halloween. Give me a break. But it's I like this movie. You know, it's not one of the best slashers out there, but I kind of think it's a cool thing, and I think if it was available to more people, I don't want to say it's a gem because I don't know if it quite is a gem. I think it's a decent little slasher that's worth checking out if you can get hold of it. That's what I would say. Don't go in there expecting it to be, you know, this amazing thing, because it won't be. But I think it's got some standout moments in it. Unfortunately, it doesn't have, I suppose, the big memorable kill. Like, do you remember that film, The Prowler? Which I think we covered, didn't we, on this film, which has which is very slow in parts, but it has a couple of killer Savini effects in it. Like the knife going up through the chin. There's nothing as memorable as that in it. But I quite like this. I certainly think, considering how similar parts of these two movies are, I think this is a much more accomplished movie than Terror is.
You know, Arrow Video and 88 Films have released worse films than this. You know what I mean? In there, and fair play to them. They put a lot of stuff out of these obscurities, which is great. They put stuff out that I think is definitely worse than this movie. So it wouldn't surprise me if maybe one day they did pick it up. You know, 88 Films especially, because they have or had a slasher line, didn't they?
Yes, I think they still do.
Yeah, so, you know, it'd fit quite well into there, I think.
You're an obscurity, you big bloody bastard.
Thanks, man.
That's for sure. But let me tell you, Tom, as our final thing before we bid everybody farewell, that if you want this film, well, Superstition is now largely out of print and has never been given a Blu-ray release. They saw fit to release the work of Norman J. Warren. I nearly said Warren J. Norman. They saw fit to release that on Blu-ray, but not this. It did receive a decent quality DVD release in the UK from Momentum Pictures. This release is now out of print. Ida Films released a DVD with Spanish subtitles and English language, not English, not reversing back into a child. Some years ago, and this release is still available in limited quantities. The Anchor Bay US DVD of the film is now out of print, though can still be sourced on Amazon for higher amounts. I think this is worthy of a restoration by someone. Like you say, I don't know if one of the really big boys would get to it, but someone like 88 Films, I think, could make a decent job of this.
Yeah, definitely. It's worth that.
Get James Houghton back so he can talk about his time on Knots Landing. It'll be good. I bet Amanda Reyes over there, film historian, Amanda Reyes knows about older James Houghton, because he was big in the soap scene, Tom. The Young and the Restless, the Bold and the Beautiful, the Finely Shaved Scrotum.
Love that show.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. That's my favourite one, Tom. Well, I think that's going to be the end of the spooky Halloween special. All spiders going up your arm. It's a scary Halloween, Tom. I don't know about you, but I'm scared.
Terrified.
You sound it, Tom. You sound it. I hope you put some nice effects in there now. Like there's a big you're going to do comedy effects over my voice. I know you, but I hope there's like a skeleton with these big bones going bing bong, bing bong. Don't get any funny ideas and make me sound stupid. All right?
I would never do that. I'll put some top-notch effects in there. Don't you worry.
Oh. Don't know if I can trust you. Well, look, folks, that's the end of another episode of the Strange and Deadly Show, episode 33. We're getting towards the end of our running order, Tom. We're almost there. I reckon another 10 or 11 years and we'll have it done.
Can't wait. It's like we only started yesterday, but it was actually 17 years ago.
Well, we have been busy, Tom. We've been on the Leto side of things, and life has gotten in the way this year, unfortunately, due to some family stuff that's happened. But I would like to think that we'll eventually come back and finish all of this, Tom. Perhaps if we get a break from Leto for a bit, because we're about to finish the second phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, maybe we can come and do an episode or two and try and get these done. But we're not far away at all.
That's right. But, and I'm not asking for money here, but we do the spin-off Strange and Deadly's Television Terror, which we put out on this feed over on the Twilight Zone Patreon. If you're that starved of this double act and you don't like superhero movies, then maybe that's one to check out. Yeah,
this double act is more tolerable on those shows because I have to rein it in a bit. So if you listen to this and you thought, oh fuck, I can't deal with this for 90 minutes at a time, then perhaps listen to those. And we're still rolling with those, and we're gonna reach an endpoint with it. I mean, TV Terror on Tom's Patreon, that's going to take forever because there's a lot of episodes to get through. Night Gallery and Tales from the Crypt, but Tales from the Crypt is it's leaning towards the scuzzier side of things, so perhaps that'll give you a similar feeling. And who knows what will happen once we've reached the end of the Section 3 list. Time will tell if we ever follow that up with anything. It remains to be seen, but there's plenty of our podcasting work out there if you'd like to hear that. And if you want to listen to Tom speaking about the Twilight Zone on his own, you can do that on the Twilight Zone podcast, the Rondo award-winning. I understand, Tom, that you dropped the award the other day and you've superglued it all back together.
I don't know where you heard that from, but it's not true. It sits here on my shelf, looking very beautiful.
Pretty sure I saw a listing for it on eBay, but it could go either way, I guess. If you want to give another award to a man who would sell off his beloved Rondo Award, superglue back together on eBay, you can do that. Alternatively, you could give it to somebody like me. Never won anything. I'd like something. Could I have an award for taking the longest to finish editing a show? Could that be one?
I think you were clean up in that category, to be honest, after that Leto that we done 4 months ago. Yeah, but
Right, I'm getting out of it. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. It's been lovely to speak with you once again. Do continue to watch lots of good horror movies, and we'll see you again in the very near future on the Strange and Deadly Show. My name is Christopher Clayton.
And I'm Tom Elliott.
There he is, the boy himself. And thank you very much for listening. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye. You've been listening to The Strange and Deadly Show. Music by Danny Davis, artwork by Dark Ink One, and presented by Chris Clayton and Tom Elliott. To listen to the back catalogue or to check out other shows on the network, please visit strangeanddeadly.com.